My name is Stuart Coleman, and I'm the Executive Director of WAI. And it's on behalf of my team and all our distinguished legislators, we want to welcome you to our town hall meeting for Koloa and Poipu. And we really appreciate you all for taking the time to join us tonight. But before we begin, I want to just say, make a word about this PSA that we have in front, this slide that you see. We like to say that cesspools anywhere near the coast are like toilets on the beach. So this was a PSA we did that was very popular, just to explain it. But we are seeking solutions and answering questions about cesspools and water quality. And now I will turn it over to Sierra to start us off with a little kind of statute about aloha.
Yes, hello everyone, and thanks for joining. I'm just going to start out with reading from Chapter 5, the Hawaii Revised Statutes. It says, Aloha spirit is the coordination of mind and heart within each person. It brings each person to the self. Each person must think and emote good feelings to others. These are traits of character that express the charm, warmth, and sincerity of Hawaii's people. It was the working philosophy of Native Hawaiians and was presented as a gift to the people of Hawaii. Aloha is more than a word of greeting or farewell or salutation. Aloha means mutual regard and affection and extends warmth and caring with no obligation in return. Aloha is the essence of relationships in which each person is important to every other person for collective existence. Aloha means to hear what is not said, to see what cannot be seen, and to know the unknowable. Yoko, you can move it on to the next slide. So we are the WAI team for Wastewater Alternatives and Innovations. Stuart Coleman is our Executive Director. John Anner is our Managing Director. Then we have Christina Comfort is our Program Manager. Yoko Snyder is our Senior Projects Coordinator, and I'm Sierra, the Project Coordinator here at WAI. And our mission at WAI is to work to protect water quality, reduce sewage pollution, and restore healthy watersheds by providing innovative, affordable, and eco-friendly solutions to waste and water management for all people. And our vision is to help Hawaii homeowners and communities manage the difficult process of upgrading cesspools and failing septic systems across the state to new systems that are affordable, efficient, and better for the environment.
Mahalo, Sierra. And we are pleased tonight to welcome, during a very busy legislative session, we appreciate them taking time off, Senate President Ron Kouchi and Representative James Tokioka. And we'll have them say a few words, but I also want to welcome Councilmember Mason Chock and Councilmember Luke Evslin, who've been working with us closely. And I want to welcome Carl Berg, scientist with the Surfrider Foundation, and our colleagues, Paul Sturm at Ridge-to-Reefs, for joining us. And they will be part of our panel afterwards. But right now, I'll kick it to Senator Kouchi to say a few words. Thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you, Stuart, and the rest of the WAI team. You know, we blocked this in our calendars and, you know, said we're committed to the date and we're in the middle of racing deadlines. And I was telling Stuart, I have a few members sitting in my office needing my time, but I did want to at least say, you know, that I have had at least one meeting with the team already, but we've been working on the issue of cesspool conversion ever since I've been at the legislature. We've had issues where the DLNR has been cited up in Kokee for some of the cesspool systems and needing to convert to be in compliance with federal law. We were lobbying extensively to try and get FEMA assistance with the North Shore flooding in April of 2018, but they would not allow federal money to be used to improve private property. And so we're hopeful that in this iteration that there's going to be some federal grants that would be available to assist. The dollar amount for the conversion is huge, and it's a big issue. And believe it or not, we're ahead of the curve on Kauai compared to Maui and the Big Island, but that doesn't mean that it isn't a big issue for us, and I want you to know I'm aware of it. So thank you.
Mahalo, Senator Kouchi, we appreciate that. And Representative Tokioka?
Thank you, Stuart. Echoing the comments of Senate President, thank you all for what you're doing. Bringing awareness to this and coming up with solutions is, I know, your goal. I mentioned earlier before we came on the call that tomorrow night we have an environmental caucus group with the Department of Health, and it's another group that is working on the same thing. So it's great that everybody's trying to come up with solutions. Hopefully the parallel tracks will end up on the same track as we move forward. But we are here. We've both, when Ron and I were on the county council, working with the wastewater division there, have been involved in the process, and we want to continue to do as much as we can here. We also know that the state of Hawaii has the most cesspools than any other state in the country. So it is a big problem, and it's coming to head now, and we need to make sure that we protect our oceans. I see Carl Berg on the line, and there's nobody who's more adamant about clean water and our beaches and our ocean than he is, that I know. And I appreciate him as well, being somebody who's educates us all the time. Of course, Council members Luke Evslin and Mason Chock have been on the ground with the county council, because that's where it starts, and we appreciate all the work that they have done, and of course Mayor Kawakami and his team. So we're here ready to help, and however we can, we're thankful that we were invited to be a part of the group.
Mahalo. We appreciate your comments and your support. We still have a few bills at the legislature that are moving through. So yeah, we hope it'll be a good session to move this issue forward. Thanks again, gentlemen. All right, and then we'll move on to a survey. All right.
Okay, so this is our first survey. I'll just read it out loud, so give you time to answer. Number 1 says, do you think that cesspools pose a problem in Hawaii? Yes, no, or not sure. The second question is, complete this sentence. I've heard that sewer will come to Poipu, Koloa to take care of my cesspool. I do not have to worry about my cesspool until 2050. I need to convert my cesspool to a better system, or none of the above.
And Sierra, I'll just pause right there. Folks, if you can do these surveys, it really helps us to get gather data about public opinion and kind of awareness about these issues. So thank you for just jumping in, and let us know if you have any problem filling it out, but you can just do it on your screen and scroll up. So thanks for your participation. I'll turn it back to you, Sierra.
Yeah, and the surveys are anonymous. They require you, before you can submit, you have to complete all the questions, in this case, both of the 2 questions. And looks like people are grasping it very well, because we already have 16 out of 24 participating. So I'll give it a couple more seconds, and then I'll end the poll so that Sierra can read the results.
Can
Maybe
we
5 more
seconds. People? Yes, we're almost there.
4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let me share the results. Okay, go ahead, Sierra.
So as you can see here, for number 1, do you think cesspools pose a problem in Hawaii? 94% said yes, 6% said no, which is 1 person. So that's good. It does pose a problem. And then number 2, complete the sentence. I have heard that. And then let's see. 33% said sewer will come to Poipu, Koloa and take care of my cesspool. 17% said I do not have to worry about my cesspool until 2050. 44% said I need to convert my cesspool to a better system, and 17% said none of the above. So thank you guys for giving us this information, and we're gonna hopefully answer a lot of these unknowns tonight. And if you have any more questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, or we'll have some time at the end as well for questions.
Great. And it's always good to begin with the basic distinction. Most of you probably know this, but a cesspool is basically just a hole in the ground. It's open at the bottom and it has perforated sides, usually tile or brick, and there's no treatment that goes on. So all the pathogens, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and contaminants just go right through and eventually end up our groundwater. A septic system is composed of two parts: a septic tank that's enclosed, where the solids generally settle, and then there's kind of minimal treatment that goes on in there, but the treatment happens when it goes outside of the septic tank and into the leach field. And the microbes in the soil help break down all the pathogens. They don't take care of the nutrients and but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then just to give you a brief history of why we're here, there's a kind of the history of our legislative work at the Capitol started in actually before 2015, but we passed Act 120, which banned the construction of new cesspools. We were the last state to do that by several decades. And then in 2017, we passed Act 125, which mandated the upgrade of all cesspools by 2050, and DOH produced a prioritization report about the areas that were most impacted. And finally, we passed Act 132 in 2018. That was the creation of the Cesspool Conversion Working Group. And I serve on that with about 17 other folks from different backgrounds. And now we're working on cesspool conversion bills to provide assistance and grants for low-income homeowners, and a couple other bills. So I'll pass it on to Christina.
Thanks, Stuart. So now I'm going to go over a little bit about the cesspool priority areas, the conversion priority areas. These are defined by the Hawaii Department of Health in 2017. And there are three main priority areas that are currently established, which are priority 1, which are areas of significant risk. These are regions that had documented impacts to drinking water or to the ecosystem at the time that these designations were made. Priority 2 areas have potential for impacts to drinking water, and priority 3 areas have potential impacts to ecologically sensitive waters. At the time, priority 4 were impacts not identified. There's been a lot of effort going on to work on categorizing those remaining cesspools, so we'll have updates on that shortly, but we're still kind of in the finalization stages of, of categorizing those remaining cesspools. So on Kauai, there are about 13,700 cesspools. And those cesspools discharge about an estimated 19.5 million gallons per day of effluent into the ground. Much of that effluent reaches the groundwater and surface waters and the coastal ocean, causing a range of environmental problems, also human health problems. And we're looking at priority level 2 for this area, for the Poipu Koloa area of Kauai. That means that there's a risk to drinking water, but as you'll see in our next few slides, we also believe there's a risk to the ecosystem here. There are 3,600 cesspools in this region, discharging about 2.6 million gallons per day. So you can see this blue shaded area on the map is the boundaries of the DOH defined priority area, and each red dot is a cesspool. So you can see the areas where they're really high density compared to areas where there's not any cesspools. Briefly, I'm just going to go over the health and environmental risks that are associated with wastewater pollution from the cesspools. On the public health side, if you get cesspool pollution into your drinking water, there is a couple different things that can happen. It's possible to encounter pathogens in your drinking water, and it's also possible that elevated nutrient levels, specifically nitrate, in your drinking water can be linked to an increased cancer risk for certain types of cancer, such as bladder cancer. There's also the risk of encountering pathogens in the environment. So when this pollution reaches the coastal ocean, if you go swimming with a cut or if you swallow some water, it's possible to get sick from that, either a skin infection or gastrointestinal infection or different types of infections in your eyes and ears. And many of you probably know somebody or yourself have gotten infections from dirty water. On the environmental side, these nutrients that come from cesspool pollution can leach into the reef and cause invasive algae to overgrow corals. So this is really bad for our coral reef ecosystems. It makes the corals less competitive, and invasive algae, like shown in this picture, can overgrow the whole ecosystem, which does a lot of damage to fish populations, and also it leads to things like the tumors that you see on Honu. There's also sewage pollution can also lead to increased rates of coral disease and reduced coral cover overall. And finally, there's contaminants of emerging concern. These are different types of things like pharmaceuticals and other compounds that are found in wastewater that have a variety of impacts both in humans and in ecosystems. And we're still kind of figuring out how to regulate those contaminants, which is why they're called emerging concern, but we do know that they're problematic. And I just want to give a short shout out to the Department of Land and Natural Resources Division of Aquatic Resources, who are heading up the Holomua 30 by 30 program. So this is an initiative that is aiming to protect or manage 30% of the coastlines by 2030. And this has, their initiative has 4 pillars: place-based planning, Pono practices, monitoring, and protection and restoration. And DAR really acknowledges that it's not just fishing impacts on the reef, that there's also land-based impacts on the reef. So we're partnering with DAR and helping to, bring in some of these land-based impacts into the equation and making sure that when we're working on monitoring, when we're working on protection and restoration, both the fishing impacts and the land-based pollution impacts are taken into account. And from here, I'm going to pass it over. Oh, sorry, I have one more slide. This is a slide showing some water quality data for Kauai, and specifically there's a data point for Poipu Koloa that I wanted to share. These are some data from University of Hawaii scientists. It's the Celia Smith lab, and they have used algae tissue that they take from the reefs, and they're able to determine the sources of nutrients from looking at the isotopes in this algae tissue. So basically what that means is that wastewater has a distinct nutrient signature, and the algae show that signature when you analyze it. So you can see here the squares. There were samples taken down in the Poipu Koloa region, and those samples came back in the red range, which means that the nutrient input in that region is dominated by wastewater. And with that, I'll pass it over to Carl Berg, Dr. Carl Berg from the Surfrider Foundation, to talk a little bit more about some of the data we have for this region.
Welcome, Carl. You may be muted.
Now, what I want to do is to go over the water quality data that's available for the Koloa landing area, the Waikomo stream. And the Department of Health has been studying Enterococcus for many years. That is the indicating bacteria of fecal antiquorm, fecal indicating bacteria. The USGS has studied of personal stuff. Here, the health department data, it's very, very spotty. But what you can see is that they take their sample at the Koloa landing, right where you go in if you're snorkeling, and that most of the time the data is below the limit, 130, meaning it's polluted at that level. What I found in just looking at this brief data, 2 things. One is they don't sample there very, very often. And secondly, that only about, they only found clean water about 15% of the time. Can I have the next slide? Surfrider has been sampling every single month out there since 2012, 10 years. The yellow line is the average that the bacteria levels, which in this case are going up to about 20,000, that they should in fact be below that yellow line on average. Any single sample should be below that red line, or 130. So we take the samples not at the boat ramp, but at the stream mouth, about, I don't know, 70 feet away, because this is where all the pollution is coming down from. So We say that Waikomo stream is greatly polluted. Next, please. Next slide. I had a Kauai Community College student, Sina Wetzel, who back in 2012 took samples and analyzed them for the same bacteria, starting way down at Koloa Landing, all the way up. And again, the values of the bacteria should be below 130. And you can see here that they're all in the thousands. And the important thing here is that all the water was polluted, and it was all the way up to that traffic circle, up past the fire station. Next slide. So I've done a more recent study, and you can see Koloa Town here, and we took it all the way up. Stream sample number 1 is right at Koloa Landing, and then we have it at Omau Stream and Waiahai Stream. The bacteria counts are in the thousands or in the hundreds. This water is polluted no matter which one you look at. But we did another trick. We looked at sucralose, which is artificial sweetener that's only found from humans. And what we found, again, was that there was high levels of sucralose in all of the samples, which means that the pollution in this stream is coming from all those houses that you see there. And that the nutrient levels that were found by Dr. Smith in the algae, that's all coming from cesspools. It's not coming from injection wells, sewage treatment plants. It's all coming from the cesspools. Next slide. Is there a next slide? So just finishing up, we also did one other study, which is significant, but it's also fun. We did canine scent detection. So dogs have been able to smell out drugs, weapons, everything. We found out that they could also smell out sewage, human sewage. And guess what? We found it all in Waikomo Stream. So for us, there is no doubt at all that Waikomo Stream is impacted with human sewage, which makes it a public health risk. And it dumps right out at Koloa Landing, where everybody goes snorkeling and playing. And they may have clean water when they're outside diving, but then they come back in and coat themselves with highly polluted water. So we've been advocating fruitlessly to have the Department of Health do something about it, put warning signs up, but this is where VI comes in. We got to clean it up. Next, go ahead.
Carl, we want to thank you so much, you and the Surfrider Foundation, for all the work you did. You have an extensive record, and over the last 10 years, we really appreciate that, because it helps supplement what the Department of Health is doing and gives us a lot more in-depth information in those areas. So mahalo. I'll pass it to Yoko.
Thank you. Yes, so what can we do about these problems now that we know what caused them? Well, we deal with the cesspools and we replace them with something better. And so we're going to go through a number of technical solutions on different scales and see what are most feasible for the Poipu Koloa area. We can start with something that most people should be familiar with, which is county sewer, also called municipal sewer, which is basically the county installing a large-scale centralized treatment plant and then pipes from every house pumping their wastewater there. You can see Kauai currently has 4 municipal sewer treatment plants, and the closest one is pretty far away. So it's not really a feasible solution for Poipu Koloa. Addition to that, traditional gravity sewer, which is what municipal sewer usually is, very expensive to construct, very invasive. It takes a lot of construction. It has to go over the road, so the road has to be busted open, traffic issues, all kind. And then filtration issues also when the groundwater enters through cracks in the pipe, and it leads to monthly sewer bill for homeowners. So we can do better than that. So let's see what else is around. Private sewer has been in the Poipu Koloa area for a while now. The biggest one is the Poipu Wastewater Reclamation Facility, which is run by HOH Utilities currently, and it's going to be sold to Hawaii Water Service pretty soon here if the plans go through. Has a capacity of 1 million gallons per day, and in 2020 there was a low estimate of about 220,000 gallons per day. So it is possible that more houses will be connected to a private wastewater treatment plant, which is sort of similar to county sewer, except run by a private company, pretty soon. So we're going to be at VI, we're going to be trying to get in touch with those private treatment plants and trying to see what their expansion plans are so we can inform the public about this. Going again a size smaller on individual wastewater systems, which is where every house deals with their wastewater treatment and dispersal on site. So the most well-known one Stuart has already talked about earlier is a septic system, consists of a septic tank and a leach field or field. And while those do provide treatment, which cesspools don't, they still have a lot to wish for. They still don't treat nutrients, which then go into the water and to require lots of space. So we'll go in the future, we'll go through what are better alternatives. And then composting toilets, many people ask us about composting toilets. They work for some people that are willing and able to put in the extensive maintenance and operation that goes into those. But for most people, they're not encouraged because the composted waste is still raw, untreated human sewage, and that cannot be used in agriculture, cannot be used as fertilizer, and people are still handling raw sewage manually. So it's not quite ideal. So let's see what else is out there. On a single toilet scale, we at WAI are partnering with a company called Cinderella. They're from Norway, and they make incineration toilets. Those are what you think they are. They are waterless toilets. They're not hooked up to a water line or sewer line, but rather they incinerate the waste right in the bottom of the toilet. As you can see, those that ash chamber there in the bottom. They incinerate the waste into a pathogen-free and odorless ash that only has to be emptied for a single family about once a week. And we've already installed many toilets across the island. People are really happy with them. And they're both in an electric powered version that is really good for existing homes and propane powered version that is really good for off the grid outhouses like the one you see on the top right there. And we partner with a company locally that's called Luna Environmental. And we're excited to announce that we are in the finishing touches of a pilot system that uses these toilets together with a gray water system and a kitchen black water system in Wailua homesteads. And you'll hear much more about very soon when we're allowed and able to show off. Basically, this eliminates a cesspool and it's much cheaper, smaller footprint than a septic system. And yeah, this is a pilot that will be tested and hopefully will be all over the islands very soon. Then we partner with a local small startup company called WAI Home that makes a pilot using algae. And you can see it looks kind of like a solar panel that mounts onto a septic tank. And this provides additional treatment to an existing septic tank. Really exciting, but still very early stage, and you'll hear much more about it pretty soon as well. Now getting to more established solutions that are also very good alternatives to septic. You can see they're kind of, we call them enhanced septic systems because they're similar concept, but much better treatment, especially nitrogen removal. So going left, we have a biofilter that is essentially a septic tank and a leach field, but the leach field has a a wood chip layer beneath it that allows for special bacteria called aerobic bacteria to live and take the nitrogen out before the water goes into the soil. On the bottom, we have a constructed wetland also called Bioreactor Garden, which we're partnered with a nonprofit called Ridge-to-Reefs. They're actually here with us today on the call, and you'll hear much more here in a second. And aerobic treatment units in the top right, they are not a nature-based solution. They're a mechanical solution. They use electricity, very small footprint, and they also produce high-quality effluent that can then go to a leach field. And we'll kick it over to Paul and Fal from Ridge.
Hi, I'm Paul Sturm. I'm the Executive Director of Ridge-to-Reefs, and I'll just give a little background on our organization. We work across the Pacific and the Caribbean, as well as the mainland US. But historically, we've done a lot of work on islands, in particular, working on watersheds and watershed issues, pollution issues. And we kind of waded into this issue of wastewater treatment, particularly nature-based wastewater treatment, because we saw this being an issue across every island that we've ever worked, including, the Hawaiian Islands, American Samoa, Palau, Puerto Rico. And so anyway, we have a team that's composed of engineers, biologists, agronomists, and some of our staff here, particular to this project, are shown here. And we have staff across, we have in a number of Pacific areas and countries, as well as Puerto Rico. And so one of the things we did is worked with VI to get a USDA technical assistance and training grant. And through that, we're working with them to convene local stakeholders and wastewater professionals. And this meeting is part of that project. The other aspect of the project will be technical training to folks involved in the wastewater industry, specific to nature-based wastewater solutions. Next. This just shows how our organization works and how we think about pollution in the watershed. And so we work across all of these spheres. So whether it's agricultural pollution, we work with dirt roads and construction runoff, sedimentation. You can see here, again, nature-based solutions where we're creating vegetative sediment traps for dirt coming off of dirt roads during storm events in West Maui and other places in Maui. Other things that we're doing are using vegetation and even agricultural restoration plants and even food crops, and looking at the reuse of wastewater, in particular, some of the wastewater that's coming from that would be going to these injection wells. And this, the Supreme Court litigated these cases and found that Maui County needs to address these issues because they're causing contamination in the nearshore environment. And just a couple other pictures of a large capacity wastewater treatment system that we built, again, a nature-based in the bottom left corner in Puerto Rico. And then you can see to the right there is what we call our bioreactor garden. And we worked with University of Hawaii and VI to test that system at the East Honolulu treatment plant. And so it's worked very well. You can see some of the other types of projects we do working with farms and really trying to improve soil to reduce runoff and reduce contamination. Next slide. So with this technical and training grant, just want to kind of show you all where we are on this grant. Again, we're focusing on 5 high priority cesspool areas, and 3 of them are in Kauai. One is in Maui, and 1 is on Big Island. And again, I think part of it is an educational process with homeowners and stakeholders. And then part of it is that more technical training with folks that are more involved in the processing of wastewater and more involved on the technical side of addressing these issues. And so one of the next things we have coming up is this summer we'll have a training in Poipu and Koloa that will be associated and with VI and working on talking more about nature-based solutions and how they can be integrated into these systems, and they're a much lower cost and highly effective. And we'll also be working on technical memos for each of the communities and trying to find funding opportunities, identify funding opportunities, and even write grants to help to bring some funding to these 5 communities that cesspools are impacting significantly. Next. This just shows some of the issues in Poipu and Koloa and some of the challenges. Very often on islands, septic systems and cesspools don't work terribly well on islands in generally because of poor soils and then other challenges with the soils. And here you can see most of the soil types here have large stones and a depth to bedrock that's not very deep. And so you can see when construction happens, and this is in Poipu, you can see all these rocks that have to be dug up in order to perhaps build a system or build a home. And so that's certainly a challenge, and that certainly can increase the cost of these practices. Next slide. And again, these are just some of those examples of nature-based systems, again, for an individual lot. And the only reason we built this above ground, it can be built in the ground or partially in the ground, but we built it above ground because it was we were testing it at a sewage treatment plant that didn't want to, have it in place forever. But this is an example from a hotel. You can see it's in the ground. And this hotel actually sees this as an amenity. And I think this used to be a place where their septic system was failing, and it was surcharging into the environment, into the adjacent bay. And now it's no longer doing that, and they see it as an amenity, and they're maintaining it very well. The last picture in the bottom is where we're using vetiver grass and other species to uptake wastewater from the Kihei sewage treatment plant in a pilot project, and as a way to dispose of that water and grow restoration crops rather than allow that to contaminate the groundwater and then make its way out to some of the beaches in Kihei. Next. And real quickly, we're publishing some of this data right now with University of Hawaii and Dr. Roger Babcock. But they're seeing 87% removal of total nitrogen, which is really high. Greater than 80% removal of phosphorus, 96% removal of TSS. And we're also seeing a 15% to 20% volume reduction. And that's because these plants are actually uptaking a lot of pollutants and reducing the volume of water. And the whole reason we developed this is because it can be made from local materials. It doesn't have to be shipped in on barges and ships. It can be made from local materials and often seen as waste stream issues, where we can use wood chips, we can use even recycled bottles in the glass or glass from the recycled bottles. We can turn that into sand and have that be part of the filtration layer before the denitrification layer. And there's no electricity required in these systems. So it's not adding an additional burden to the homeowner. And we looked at the numbers here, and it should be at least a $10,000 cost savings versus a traditional ATU unit, and higher performance from what we're seeing. And that's all I have, I think, and I'll turn it back over to the VI team.
Mahalo, Paul.
All right,
Okay,
let me
so
launch.
next, we're going to be doing a demographic survey. And again, this one is fully anonymous. So this one's just for our information. So number one is English your primary language? Yes or no? Do you consider yourself a person with limited English proficiency, or LEP? These persons are those that have a limited ability to read, speak, write, and understand English. Yes or no? Number three is, would you benefit from English translation assistance to another language? Yes or no? If you answered yes to question three, what language would you require translation assistance for? Spanish, Tagalog, Hawaiian, other, or I did not answer yes to question three. Question five is, please indicate your race, ethnicity, required for compliance with USDA regulations. So American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, not Hispanic or Latino, some other race, two other races, or white.
Thank you, Sierra. And as she mentioned, we need this data as part of our federal grant. So if you can we can get up to 16, 18, that would be great. Thank you so much. And while
Yeah, so
we're
we'll just
waiting,
leave it open for a little bit longer. It looks like 66% of people have participated so far.
while we give it the final few seconds before Kanisa signs off, her UHC grant program, Voice of the Sea, just won a number of Tele Awards, national awards, and 3 on the Cesspool issues. You can find them in the link in the chat. So congrats, Kanisa, and thanks for all the good work helping us and you all educate people on this issue. Turn it back to you all for the poll results. I don't know if we have to read the poll results here.
I think we're good.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Thank you. And so next we're going to talk about something that Joanne Yukimura mentioned in the chat about community scale wastewater systems. And these are systems that you know, are in between kind of massive sewering, which is the most expensive and disruptive form, and then individual wastewater system conversions. And so they're sometimes referred to as package plants or decentralized systems. And this is the middle ground, you know, that serves but anywhere from 20 to 200 homes. And it's a way to work on a local scale and practice a circular economy approach where we reuse the solids and the liquids, and we have a lot of resource recovery. So this is kind of a glimpse of where we will be heading in the future. So there are, you know, in order to do this, communities need to set up community sewer projects, and that can be done by a sewer improvement district or a community facilities district. And you need, you know, either 50% of the homeowners signing on to do this in a community, or the county council can vote on it and pass a bill to do it. And this can bring in possible funding from the new Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and Clean Water State Revolving Funds. So homeowners will still pay part of the infrastructure cost versus special type of tax, but this is a really good way for a community to solve infrastructure problems together. And just to remind everybody why it's so important is that we have in the state a high level of 303D impaired bodies of water across the state. And a lot of them are impaired due to sedimentation and wastewater inputs. So we're trying to get beyond that. And one of the companies that we feature in this is called Cambrian. And we help them, we want a grant through Elemental Accelerator to help them set up a system in Hawaii. And their approach is unique because it's containerized and it's mobile and stays above ground. So you don't need all the huge infrastructure work to go underground with this. And it can be scaled up if a community expands. And the amazing thing is that it produces water that is suitable for recycling goals and for irrigation. It can go up to R1 water. And so there are no upfront costs, and they have a sanitation as a service model where, you know, people pay per gallon of wastewater treated. And so they take the water from a community, there's a monthly fee, and then they produce water for irrigation. And then if there's ag in the area, they can, you know, we can use that for those sites. And then the solids will go to, you know, hopefully to another company that we work with that we'll tell you about called Biomass Controls. I met these folks at the Gates Foundation in that picture. This is in Beijing. And they are similarly a container size omniprocessor. So it's mobile and scalable. And we work together at the Gates Foundation, and they can turn the solid waste into biochar. And biochar is done through a process of pyrolysis, and it turns these solids, eliminates 100% of the pathogens, and 95% of like PFAS, PFOS, chemicals of emerging pharmaceuticals and contaminants of emerging concern. And the great thing is you can use that for you can use sludge and ag waste, green waste, to turn it into this biochar. And you take the sludge, and through this process, you take the stuff that is literally odorless and 100% pathogen free. And if you've probably heard of other biosolids companies, where they recycle it and they hope to use it as fertilizer, a lot of people don't like it because it still smells, it still has contaminants, it still has chemicals, pharmaceuticals, but this you can be sure, does not. And that biochar can be used for filtration, water filtration. It's like activated carbon for air and water filtration, and you can use it for soil remediation. So really, it's been listed as one of the top 20 ways to reduce the effects of climate change. If you think of all the wastewater treatment plants around the country, they could, instead of trucking those solids to a landfill where they continue to emit greenhouse gases, and then you have the trucks burning, fuel to get there, you could do this on site and use it for agricultural inputs. So it's really exciting prospect for the future. The other thing that we're very excited about is in the Koloa area where you have that wastewater treatment plant, and it's a private plant, but how do you get these other homes connected? If you use traditional sewer, that can literally take years and years and years, and you have to, on roads where it's only 2 lanes, you have to completely disrupt the roadway, and sometimes it can take weeks, months at a time. This system through a RINCO is called pressurized liquid-only sewer. And so they put a septic tank and treatment system in the ground at each house, and then they only pump out the liquids through small PVC pipes that can join other lines that are just trenched just under the ground. So you don't have to go in a deep gravity sewer 6 feet under this huge pipes. These can be pumped. The liquids can go to either a local sewer line nearby or to a treatment plant, or if you wanted to construct, decentralized wastewater treatment plant, you could do that. But this is the cheapest option that we think that it's going to eliminate a lot of sewering that we don't think is going to happen in most of the rural areas. And they have a sanitation as a service model also. So they could do this where people just pay, for pennies per gallon of treated effluent, and they don't have to have, $38,000 and upward cost of doing a whole septic system and leach field. So it can save a lot of upfront cost. So what we envision at WAI is this circular economy approach, where we reuse all of our solids and liquids, and we use the liquids for irrigation, and we use the solids as soil remediation, as a carbon sink for stormwater filtration, odor filtration, and this will help us meet our carbon neutrality goals, our ag goals for localized ag, and more sustainable agriculture across the state. And Hawaii, as Senator Kouchi and Representative Tokioka said, we have the highest number of cesspools in the country, and we were the last state to ban them by several decades. But we have the opportunity to make Hawaii a leader in the country by going from cesspools to these kind of circular economy systems, or systems like Paul was describing, that Ridge-to-Reef does, where they're passive systems that reduce the nitrogen. Because up and down the East Coast, they're having to replace septic systems because of the nutrient pollution that created harmful algal blooms and just cost millions and millions of dollars to clean up and can devastate tourism. So we're very excited about that model. So we also have, switching to our kind of financial aspects, we have loans that are available through the USDA Rural Development Program. They're grants and loans. They're 502 and 504. We're going to send you this PowerPoint presentation. And if you could share it with your friends, that would be great. So they can get more, we can tell you more information about these. It's been a little tricky because not a lot of people qualify because of higher incomes in Hawaii and higher real estate values. But we're trying to work with USDA to really push them to be more flexible and fund more cesspool conversions. But the biggest thing and the most exciting portion is that through the bipartisan infrastructure law, we are going to be creating, and we have the opportunity to bring in tens of millions of dollars to help homeowners with these conversion costs. But we need to make sure that DOH is ready to receive those loans and grants. And so we're working with them and trying to get them to be more proactive to help local homeowners with this. And to do that, you know, we're working with the Clean Water State Revolving Fund that we've referred to as SRF for these grants, these forgivable grants to do cesspool conversions. And then, you know, Kauai County, Senator Kouchi said, it really is the leader in the state. Your county council members, especially all of them, but, you know, Luke and Mason have just done a spectacular job of really trying to find out how do we access these funds and how do we create opportunities to get some of these forgivable loans to help do these conversions. And so we can, you know, hear more from them as we move forward to do that. But it's an exciting opportunity because they've created a program that has a lot of potential. So one thing that we're really excited to announce is that we just found out last week that our application to do a congressionally directed spending item, traditionally known as earmarks, we applied for $1 million to bring federal funding to Hawaii to do workforce development about these very issues, to help create more workers and labor force to do these conversions, because right now we just don't have enough engineers, designers, contractors, inspectors to do this work. So this will probably begin in October. We're very excited about it because we're going to train about 150 professionals in these 5 tracks: installer, inspector, operator, maintainers, designers, and advanced manufacturers. And we believe that this can be a win-win situation for the whole state, because the more federal money that we can bring in, the more local green jobs we can create. And these definitely are well-paid jobs, and they're long-term. And so we're working with the community colleges to set up these training programs. And we'd love to work with you all on this to help spread the word and also encourage younger people or displaced workers to get involved with these jobs, because we're going to need a lot of people. It's going to be a big opportunity. So yes, thank you for all your attention. I'm sorry, this has been like drinking from a fire hose. We have a lot of information that we wanted to share with you. And we're going to start a new survey that I'll turn it over to my talented team to do the final survey.
Go ahead, Sierra.
All right. So the last poll for today is for number 1, what barriers exist for residents of Poipu, Koloa to convert their cesspools? So this is what you are thinking is the first answer is cost of converting, construction impact on property, you don't know how to start the process, you don't feel that it's that important, or none of the above. The second question is, are you concerned about human health and environmental problems posed by cesspools? You can say yes, no, or you need more information. This third question is, what value would be the biggest motivator for residents of the Poipu, Koloa to convert their cesspools? So you can select multiple on this one, which is clean environment, public health, improved property value, regulation, law abiding, or none of the above. Number 4 is If up to $20,000 in financial aid was available, would you be more willing to convert your cesspool in the next 1 to 3 years? So that you could say yes, no, or maybe, or you do not own a home with a cesspool. And number 5 is complete this sentence with all that may apply. I am concerned about water quality as it relates to sewage pollution for swimming, fishing and traditional practices, drinking water, coral reef health, or I do not have water quality concerns related to sewage pollution.
Thank you, Sierra. And if we could get up to 15 participants, that would be great. Just because, again, this is information that's valuable for our reporting and just to really get a sense of the public's concerns and where the greatest concerns lie.
And then Sierra, if you want to read the results.
We can probably just scan through this if you want. Sierra, it sounds like your voice is getting a little hoarse.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm losing my voice.
No worries.
So for this first one, it looks like most people were concerned about the cost of converting. With the second runner-up is construction impact on property. The second one, are you concerned about human health and environmental problems? 100% said yes. And the biggest motivator to convert, the top ones are clean environment and public health. And for number 4, if 20 grand was a financial aid was available, would you convert? And 73% said yes. And then the rest said, I don't have a home. So that's good. And then most people were concerned about cesspool damage for their swimming, drinking water, coral health, and fishing. So all of them were a pretty big concern for people.
And then I don't know if Christina is back. She got kicked off her Wi-Fi. So Stuart, maybe if you want to cover this real quick.
Sure. Yeah, thank you all for participating in that poll. We appreciate it. And like we said, we'll send this out and it's being filmed. If you could also share it with people you know who have cesspools and might benefit. And these are some of the links that are useful. We have, cesspool conversion. If your people are interested in converting, they can just fill out this form and we can give them information. There's our VIVE website, vicleanwater.org. There are sources from the DOH and EPA. And then the USDA loan program, you can look that up. And then there are also resources at the bottom from the UH Water Resources Research Center and Hawaii Sea Grant. And then we're also gonna take questions now. And then Yoko did a great job. We created something called the Potty Portal. This field, you survive on puns and especially poop puns. So check out our Potty Portal. We'll put that in the chat because that really is designed for anyone, any owner that has a cesspool and is interested. All the resources are there. Yoko did a great job putting it together. But now let's open it up for the panel. And again, really want to thank Council members Chock and Evslin for joining us tonight. They've been leaders, as well as Paul Sturm, who's staying up late on the East Coast to help us out, and Dr. Kralberg here locally in our team. But feel free to add questions in the chat, and then you can just raise your hand, that function, to ask questions of any of our panel members. So first of all, maybe just if we can get council members Chock and Evslin, if you want to just say a few introductory remarks.
Aloha.
Go with you alphabetically, yes.
Well, I'll just be quick. I was able to attend the KL presentation as well. I think, for me, the takeaways are how far we've come in a short time with the technology and the options that are now available to us. So while I am disheartened that we have the most cesspools and are the last to react to them, I think that we are also in a good position to do really good work here in transitioning our cesspools to really eco-friendly systems. The other takeaway is that, while government has been, at least at the county level, focused on sewer systems, right, centralized systems, it's apparent that we need to broaden our approach. We need to be able to service all of the needs, particularly when we look at Koloa, Poipu area. While having a sewer system is important, there are many, it's just not an option for many properties. And those are oftentimes the ones that have the greatest impact on our waters. So I'm thankful for, the partnership. I don't think we can be successful at this without organizations like WAI and other partners that can pull together the resources. So I just thank you all for your time.
Wow, appreciate it.
Yeah, Luke Evslin here. In 2010, I tried to start, I was trying to build a home and looking at septic options and just hit dead end after dead end. And I wish that WAI was around 10 years ago with all these resources, financial and all the technologies that are out there. I ended up putting in an aerobic unit. My first quote on the aerobic unit was like $100,000. We ended up finally figuring out a reasonable way to put one on. But there are so many barriers facing homeowners in trying to transition or just build one in the first place. And I really appreciate the work that you folks are all doing, kind of trying to provide wraparound services here in access to technology and funding. And just one thing to add here, especially in that last survey, you folks asked what are some of the major, reasons that people would upgrade to a septic system. And one reason that was missing in there is the fact that you can't get a building permit with a cesspool. And I think that's a huge barrier for so many local families who are trying to add on to their existing house to, make multifamily housing or provide for their, their kids or their parents or something. And I think that's the biggest motivating factor for most people is just the ability to get a building permit. And it's, certainly a big contributor to our housing crisis. Along with obviously all the environmental reasons you folks have cited tonight. So certainly one of the biggest problems that we face and will continue to face over the next 35 years in Hawaii. And appreciate the work that you folks are doing and everybody who came tonight to learn about this.
Mahalo. Yeah, it's definitely, I'm glad you pointed that out because it is definitely a key issue, not being able to build unless we have those cesspools converted. And so, yeah, it's a real issue for a lot of homeowners. But let's open it up for questions or comments. Feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand or jump in.
We had one question in the chat right before the end of the presentation from Joanne, which is, how do you ensure that owners of alternative systems maintain their systems?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll field that one maybe if anybody else wants to add afterward. But basically, that's all on the homeowner. We don't have an inspection program in the state of Hawaii, which is a big missing piece that we're very much trying to make one and help the state and counties create one. But essentially right now, the homeowner is in charge, and there are guides out there and we'll gladly give information about how to maintain your system. And it's in every homeowner's best interest, obviously, because if it fails, you know what happens, it backs up in your bathroom and you don't want that. So easy things you can do to maintain your on-site system are: don't flush oil or grease down the kitchen sink, always put it in the trash. And don't flush flushable wipes, even though they're called flushable wipes, they're not really flushable, they don't break down. Only the 3 P's should go down the toilet: pee, poo, and paper. And if you keep to those results and also pump your septic tank every 3 to 5 years, you should be in a pretty good position. But yeah, we're trying to establish an inspection program in Hawaii.
Thank you, Yoko. Christina, who's next?
Okay, yeah, next, a question from Chris White. Would Cinderella or bioreactor garden, or question mark, be better solutions than a septic system conversion? Does anyone want to take that? Stuart, maybe?
Sure. Yeah. As I mentioned, on the East Coast, from Florida up to, Maryland, New York, Rhode Island, they're having to replace their septic systems in a very, very expensive effort because while septic systems will treat the pathogens, they don't treat the nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. And those are going out and literally just kind of poisoning waterways and creating these red tides you've probably heard about, these big harmful algal blooms where you can't even go in the water. It's so toxic. Long Island, we used to go there when we were a kid and we would go clamming in the Long Island Sound. And that's the only other place in the country that has, more cesspools than Hawaii. We have the most per capita, but they have the most in numbers. And the shellfish industry has collapsed. You can't eat, the oysters or clams out of that because it's become so toxic and they can trace it back to wastewater inputs. All the systems that we showed are better, so whether it's the Ridge-to-Reefs bioreactor garden, whether it's the Elgin system, whether it's some kind of biofilter sand system that takes care of the nitrogen, they're all going to be better. Cinderella is more for inside the house. And so, the challenge with that is that you still have to, the kitchen sink is considered black water, and so is the dishwasher. And so you have to treat that. So you could replace all the toilets, but then you still have to have a smaller septic system for the kitchen black water. But that's the pilot project that Yoko has been working on with us as part of our Kauai Innovation Grant, again, Kauai being the leader. So we're trying to do a system where we've converted all the toilets to Cinderella units and then just did a smaller gray water recycling system. And we'll be having a kind of a media day, and we invite you all, hopefully in the next month or so. We'll let you know via email. And if you can come check out the system, we'd love to show it to you.
Thanks, Stuart. Next question is for council members Evslin and Chock. How do you visualize the unfolding of wastewater treatment happening in communities that don't have the traditional centralized sewage systems, such as Kilauea, Koloa, Kalaheo, and Hanalei?
I can maybe take a stab at it. I think with the formation of the state task force, I think what it's done is it's given us a little bit of a push intergovernmentally into what it is we should be focusing on. And in addition to, having putting together like the Cesspool transition program here at the local level, I think that what we've seen tonight is that there are a lot of other alternative systems that we should be investing in, and we need to ramp those up as well. The great thing, one, is that I foresee infrastructure-wise probably the most amount of funding that we've ever seen forthcoming, that we can access and that we should be looking into securing for this effort. And in addition to that, from a planning perspective, Stuart folks and the team identified, right, part of what we need to be doing is creating these sewer districts or CFD districts, the community facilities districts, in order to act on receiving those funds. Case in point, Koloa Poipu is a CFD. It's probably the only in the state or first in the state. And so we need to duplicate those opportunities across the island, or those districts across the island, so that we can take advantage of the funding that's forthcoming.
And just to add briefly to that, one of the issues here is that the county, with our existing sewer system, we don't have a current sort of prioritization for where future upgrade areas are going to be. There's Joanne, you live, I think, right off of a main sewer line where you're at. And there's no way for you to know as a homeowner whether you're eventually going to get sewer to your home. So if you're trying to decide whether to upgrade to a septic system, homeowners like you are going to be stuck in you know, I don't know if you have a cesspool or not, but just given on where you live, homeowners like you are going to be stuck in limbo, wondering whether to wait for sewer or not. So the council in the last budget session appropriated money towards a study to identify priority expansion areas, looking at a number of different factors. So at least the county can get a good grasp on where we're going to expand sewer to, and where we're likely never going to expand sewer to. And then in tandem with that, you know, the cesspool conversion program that Councilmember Chock and I have been working on for a while. One of the priorities there is to fund cesspool replacement in areas outside of planned county expansion areas, right? So I think it's just identifying where we're never going to get sewer, and then trying to find the funding to put in septic or otherwise in these areas.
Great, thank you. And I don't want to skip ahead on the question. I did see a follow-up question to this come up. So I'm just going to make a quick clarification on this and then jump back. But so Joanne said to Councilmember Chock, so you're visualizing the individual businesses and households building individual systems now and in the future. You see no future for centralized systems?
Yeah, I tried to answer that in the chat as well.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thanks.
I think we have to expand on all fronts, because not any system is it's unique in every situation and every area. So for instance, in Lihue, centralized system would work more appropriately, right? Because of the density but even in Lihue, there aren't areas that you can get to that will be able to access sewer. So we have to expand on every front. But I think your question is really about sort of how we plan for it, right? Moving it, how do we transition into it? And I'll just mention this, right? The county hasn't ever looked at individual wastewater systems. I mean, what Councilmember Evslin and I are looking at is probably the first of its kind in the state. And so I think what we're working up against is sort of a mindset that that's the only answer, and that's the only way, or the thing that the local government's going to be focused on. So I think that we need to kind of equal the playing field so that the options fit the need and place.
Yeah, thank you for that. And a quick shout out to Joanne Yukimura, a former council member and mayor of Kauai, who's also married to a wastewater specialist and hydrologist who you'll have to give our regards to. So she knows a lot about this issue. And Joanne, we're going to be recruiting you and John on this issue. We need you.
Thanks, council members, for your thoughts on that. That's really helpful. Our next question comes from Linda Palmer, which states, I'm concerned about providing financial assistance in various forms only to those with low income. If the goal is truly to get rid of as many cesspools as possible, I think you want to encourage all to convert. It looks like the gist of this question is there going to be a financial incentive for folks to convert who aren't in the low income category that the USDA can provide loans to? What does that look like?
Yeah, does anybody want to?
I can answer briefly just from the county side. The cesspool conversion program bill that Vice Chair Chock and I introduced and ultimately passed a few months ago would include financial assistance for conversion. And in the priority system that we developed around that, there's 7, maybe 6 different priorities. And it's the priorities are stacked. Only, priority number 3 is low income. So certainly, priorities 1 and 2 are based on if you're going to be building additional dwelling units, or if you're located in a priority, a DOH priority conversion area. And then the priorities are meant to be stacked. So certainly, people will be qualifying that are not low income based on the factors that Linda identified in her comment there. But I can only speak for the county perspective.
Yeah, and at the state level, I put in the chat, there's a bill, House Bill 2195, that would create a grant for low and mid income homeowners and Native Hawaiians to help convert their cesspools. And that's got a hearing on Friday. So if you want to support that, go to capital.hawaii.gov and just put in the bill number after you sign up, and you can just support that. So Carl, did you have a question?
I just have two comments that I'd like to make. One is that we're selecting certain areas like Poipu area to have cesspool replacement, or Hanalei area, etc. But within those areas, there are places, for example, those homes that are right along the stream, or in Wailua, those homes right along the river, and they're only 5 feet above the water line. Those things have to be identified and replaced immediately. Back when I was working with the Hanalei Watershed Hui, we got through our Hanalei Watershed Initiative grant monies to replace the cesspools. And I think Matt Rosner is on this call, that he and I, we replaced the cesspools along the river. Fish and Wildlife replaced them, and it worked. The bacteria counts went down. This replacing cesspools works. One other thing, though, that came up today is the septic systems and the wetland systems all do not take care of the pharmaceutical and personal care products. I just read an article where a farmer who had a big organic farm and spent years and years to do organic farming, he's been taking the biosolids from the wastewater treatment plant and putting them on his property. And now they're finding high levels of these PFASs, the forever chemicals, in his crops. And so he no longer can be called organic. He's lost his whole shtick about why you should buy from him. And then I saw today, I did that study that showed that sucralose, the artificial sweetener, is a really good indicator of human wastewater. I picked up an article today, science article, that says they've just found that artificial sweeteners are carcinogenic, that they're causing cancer, especially in obese people. And these are not taken out by any of the systems that we're talking about, except for Cinderella. And so I think as we collectively, scientists and others, looking at what do we do with our waste, we have to realize how many pollutants are in that wastewater that must be addressed. And we can't just say, oh, we're going to put it on the crops, because that does not, it just perpetuates and moves the things through, or microfibers or things like that. So I have, my perspective is in water pollution is not just the gross and easy things, the bacteria that we got rid of, which is what septic systems do, but we have to look at the nitrogens, which is what a lot of your systems are talking about. But I think we now have to look, be in the forefront as usual on Kauai, and start looking at how do we take care of or look at the chemical pollutants that are in our water systems.
Yeah. Thank you, Carl. And I think two really important takeaways of that is, we've seen this, when you convert these cesspools, you will see a change in water quality conditions, and you can see improvements. And so, that's the good news, is that this is a really big obstacle for the state, for counties and individual homeowners, but it will make a difference. And the second is, that system that we talked about with Cambrian and biomass controls, because that's a pyrolysis process, that will also take care of all those forever chemicals. And so we're looking for a community, and I guarantee that Kauai is, as Carl said, one of the more progressive counties. If we could find a small community, even as much as 20 homes, to try to put this system in, we could do a demonstration system showing that this really can work. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. So I believe that all of the questions that have been asked in the chat were either answered in the chat or answered verbally here. I do want to mention, one of them was, why is this focused on Poipu Koloa when there's other priority areas? We will be having other town hall meetings for each priority area. So Stay tuned if you're curious about the specific conditions for other priority areas in Kauai, such as in Hanalei or in Kapa'a Wailua. We will have meetings about those in the future. And yes, I guess I can just close out by, unless anyone has any more questions, feel free to raise your hand, but there is a new data prioritization report that has, it's been released, and it is kind of still in the finalization stages. So we're waiting to talk about it formally, but this new data prioritization tool is developed by the State Cesspool Conversion Working Group, and it includes a lot of different environmental parameters that will help prioritize cesspools more in a more fine scale fashion, the way that Dr. Berg was referencing. So that means that, we'd be able to look at an area and see that the cesspools that are very close to the coast, that are very close to streams, et cetera, are going to be ranked higher than cesspools that are, further away from water bodies, and things like that. There's lots of different parameters that'll be accounted for in that new version. So we will let you know when the final weightings of all the different environmental parameters have been finalized, and those rankings are final. And yeah, just follow us on Instagram, sign up for our newsletter, and we'll keep you updated about all these things, as well as potential future opportunities for financial assistance.
Thank you, Christina.
Yes.
Yeah. Before we close out, any final questions or comments, you can email us at info@vicleanwater.org. I put in the chat. We will be doing a USDA training in the area to follow up, working with Ridge-to-Reefs and Paul and Fal and his team. And so stay tuned for that. We'd love for you to, if you know any folks that are interested in doing this, contractors, engineers, or individual homeowners, let us know, and we can do the training, the technical assistance and training that we got from the USDA as part of that grant. And there's information that Mason Chock put in the chat about the bill that was passed. We definitely need support for this to make it work. They've really just done incredible work moving it forward, but now we just have to bring it, to the home stretch. And I think public support will go a long way in that effort. I want to give a quick shout out there. Everybody here is just taking their time, and we really appreciate that. Matt Rosner, I saw that you joined on. He's a wastewater engineer that's working in the Hanalei area whom Carl mentioned, and has done a lot of conversions in that area. We will be doing another town hall meeting, as Christina said, for other parts. But for tonight, we really just want to thank our panelists, from Senate President Ron Kouchi to Representative James Tokioka, and our council members Mason Chock and Luke Evslin, and special guest star Dr. Carl Berg and the Surfrider team and the Ridge-to-Reefs team as well. I want to thank my own team for just doing an amazing job with these town hall meetings and doing incredible research about water quality and wastewater technology. So with that, we'll try to end on time. We appreciate that. Feel free to reach out to us, and we will send this recording to you all along with the slide deck. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Thank you, guys.
Hello, everyone.
Appreciate it.